Good morning, everyone. I'm not talking about something related to army because I didn't have the chance to serve my country since the service in army was abolished many years ago. So I'm just talking about what is my experience on this industry. First of all, I'd like to thank you again, your association, for inviting UFI to be here. And I was surprised about the word that you chosen, because today is the conclave, and I think that you were able to do something better than when this word was founded. Maybe most of you already know that conclave comes from the old Latin language, the language of the old Roman Empire. It was chosen when sometimes happened that was so difficult to elect the new pope in Rome that all the bishops and cardinals had to be closed in a room without being possible exit this room unless they were able to elect the new pope. And they were closed cum clave. That means with key. In your organization, you were able to do something that in most of the countries we are not able to do. So to put together under one umbrella, as we did with UFI, all the chain of the exhibition industry, starting from the venues, organizers, and service providers, partners, association. And that, as I told this morning, makes easier to have one voice and to be listening to the decision politician, for example, or people who are deciding how to spend money, if in one exhibition or not. So we were able to do this without being under a key. And today, my presentation is concerning our industry and the major trends. We are talking about an exhibition industry that takes together every year quite 300 million visitors at our events, and we are able to give 680,000 job full-time equivalent with our job, and every year 4.4 million companies attend our events all over the world. And we try to represent all this industry really global. We obviously started being an European association, being founded in 1925 in Milan, but now, as you can see from this slide, UFI has a real, truly global footprint, being present with 36% of their members in Asia Pacific, 10% in Latin America and North America, obviously, and 12% in Middle East Africa. As your association, we are now representing the whole industry, so we have not only pure organizers, but also organizer and venues only, association and partner of the industry. So we were able to follow your example. How is the state of our industry with a look at your country? Well, India is located in a region where the exhibition industry is really increasing a lot. But you were also able to do even better. According to our research, in 2016, India's trade fair industry grew by 7.9%, reaching the 1.1 million of net spares sold in 2016. And similar growth is expected to be confirmed in 2017. And this is not a recent trend, because over the past 5 years, India's trade fair markets grew by almost 31%, above the original average of 27%, and was in 2016 the second strongest performing market in the region after the Philippines, with a different scale, obviously. And as a result of this performance, nowadays India is the third largest trade fair market in Asia after China and Japan. And what is useful to point out our attention is that one of the weaknesses of the last years in India were the lack of infrastructure facilities. And so India's planned investments in venues could easily result in a double-digit growth rates for several years, because now we are experiencing this willingness to invest in facilities. But until then, India's growth rates should remain above the regional average. So we expect that the Indian exhibition industry to expand by 7 to 8%, both in 2018 and 2019. One of the tools that we are providing to our members in the so-called PIN strategy, our strategy is very simple: promote, inform, and networking. And one of the tools we are now providing to our members is our barometer. We now reach the 19th edition of this instrument that try to give most information to our members, and we create this barometer with the strong support of several associations that you can see in the slide here, starting from Brazil until Southern Africa, United Kingdom, Mexico, India, US, and so on. And this barometer is built by listening our members. So in these slides, we'll have what we have learned from our Indian colleagues. And it is interesting to see that the turnover is expected to grow for the second half of this year or last year, but also increasing more for the second half of 2018. So 67% of our Indian members expect to have an increase on their turnover. And very, very, very positive thing, no one of our members from India expect to have a decrease of 10% or more in their turnover. So very confident in your country for our industry, your colleagues, and even moving to the operating profit, 21% are expected to increase over more 10% their profit, and only 5% of the Indian members of UFI are expecting to face losses during this year. And not only an increase, but what is interesting that comes out from our barometer is the approach of the Indian companies in our industry. So not only increasing, but also diversifying and innovating. 53% of our members in India will expect to have a revenue share from new business model between 10 and 25%. That means, it is a very interesting point, that the Indian companies are ready to exploit at the best the new business model which are taking place in several mature markets, and not only mature markets. And 40%, 20% are able to bet that this new model will take a profit for more than 25% of the total. It's also quite interesting to have a look at which are considered the most important business issues in the exhibition industry in India and globally. We don't have so many differences, but for example, concerning global economic developments, it's something that concerns Indian companies less than the company based abroad. In the same way, the regulatory and shareholders issues are something which is concerning the Indian companies more than abroad. On the other hand, obviously, we have the global economic developments which are not so worrying your colleagues, also due to economic situation in your country. And moving on to current strategic priorities or considered priorities from your colleague, you can see that 37% of the Indian companies think that they have as a strategic priorities to develop new activities in terms of live event or virtual events. This innovative approach is not only based on the model of the exhibitions, but also on the geographical exposure. 47% are thinking to stay in the same countries as those in which I currently operate, they say, but 53% of the Indian companies are thinking of operating and starting operating in new countries. So another sign of the innovative approach that our industry has in this country. Innovative approach that has to face several global trends that we are now experiencing in exhibitions. Some of them are very well known: the stable core, data, digital, evolution of the format, talents and skills, safety and security. We also tried to give answer to our members in these trends. We publish the so-called world map of exhibition venues, where we are monitoring the global investments into venue space, and we are realizing that these investments are continuing in a different way, obviously. In the more mature markets, such as in Europe, a lot of investments are underway, but mainly in renovating the infrastructure that we have already built, especially during the 90s. In the new markets, these new investments are focused on enlarging venues or creating new venues, so trying to overpass the lacking of spaces, especially as we experienced here in India over the last year. So this is the situation focusing on India. The total space venue available is a bit more than 350,000 square meters. We are now considering, as UFI Global Report, the venues with more than 5,000 square meters indoor. So we have 14 venues, still a low leverage on the regional space available, because India has the 1% of the global venue space available and 4.3% of regional venue space available. These are the top 10 venues currently available here. But a first sign is that compared to 2011, we experienced an increase of roughly the 30% of venue spaces. So the new investment will be absolutely welcomed by our industry, because it will be absolutely necessary to serve the increase of turnover of your company. Even because up to date we don't have any so-called large venue here. So by large venue we mean venue with more than 100,000 square meters indoor. In the world, actually, the situation is still very concentrated, because the top 5 countries account for almost 60% of the total worldwide indoor exhibition space. So we had a strong increase over the last 15 years in China. They reached the 17% of the share of global market. Still first country is US with 20%, and other 3 European countries are covering the 60% of the total space available. Obviously, with some differences, because as you can see here, for example, Asia Pacific is now at the same level of North America, but with the half of number of venues. So it means that the model which is now establishing in Asia is a very big venue compared to the ones that we have, for example, in the US. 203 number of venue give 8.22% of total capacity. Europe also is home to the biggest number of venues, still 496, but actually the trend is quite clear. So the trend of the moving of the gross capacity towards Asia Pacific is very clear. But this pavilion has to be fulfilled, so we can't take also big spaces empty. in trying to do that, we should try to follow to understand the major trend in our business. We are talking for many years, we have been talking about digitization. I remember that when I started my career in the exhibition, sometimes we were in the evening after the job time, in the offices with colleagues looking at each other, frightened about this ghost that was going around all the offices of the companies organizing exhibition. This ghost was the virtual fairs. We were so worried about the increasing importance of digital because people started discussing about the fact that virtual fair will be replacing the physical events in our pavilions. We now perfectly know that it isn't true. It didn't happen. And now we consider digital something to be able to add something to our job rather than something that would destroy our job. And we started digitizing our companies, creating IT department, digital department. We passed through digitizing the exhibitions, creating the matchmaking program, trying to solve all the problems related to ticketing at the entrance of our exhibition. And finally, we are now trying to develop new digital businesses. We are all experiencing in our company the trend to reduce investments in traditional business model and trying to invest more in these new formats, even if actually we are still far to be able to reach the percentage of profit coming from digital tools that we were expecting a few years ago. There is not a magic formula to reach this, but our efforts are there. And we are completing our barometer also to be able to give to our members all the information concerning the best practices that enable our members to improve the effectiveness of their exhibition using this new tool. And looking at the exhibition, at first sight, could be the same, because one stand, one pavilion, people around the stands, people entering the stands, but it's now completely different, we perfectly know. Some trends are affecting our exhibitions. One of them is contamination. Until a few years ago, we had a big wall between, for example, B2B and B2C exhibitions. People organizing a professional event didn't accept any kind of consumers contamination, and people from organizing B2C were only focusing on showing events and surprising people. Now something is changing. We have some huge examples. For example, in Milan, in Italy, the leading exhibition that we have in furniture, the Saloni, after being closed to public for decades, recently decided to open one day to public. Or on the opposite side, exhibitions that were dedicated to public decided to close for a few days, just dedicating the efforts to professionals. Or we even have exhibitions that I changed in gender. For example, CeBIT in Hanover, always been a professional event dedicated to IT, now from this year became a festival of digital innovation, or bread and butter starting in Berlin and then in Barcelona. So what we are facing is that we should be ready in accepting contamination in our industry, putting something concerning B2C in our professional events, and on the opposite side trying to find dedicated format for professional aspects in our consumer show. Another trend is that, okay, we are increasing a lot the spaces. We are now having new venues, but having a changing model of exhibitions and having big venues to be fulfilled, we need to enhance the quality of the staff. That's why, as UFI, are trying to enhance our efforts in giving this new opportunity to our members, organizing several moments of instruction and education for people working in new venues. We recently launched our venue management program in China, for example, that was so successful that we decided to duplicate it for the next year, the event. And also, it's necessary that the events organized in the new venues are certified, because we need to be able to give to our potential customers, potential visitors, the grant of what they are going to meet when they enter our pavilions. We can't we can't stand that someone come from another country expecting something that is not going to find in our exhibition. Another trend, especially affecting some countries, especially also in Europe, security. Security in terms not only easy of access, safe passage, but security on site. Here is really very difficult for an association to give precise suggestions or key process to our member, because we always try to invite people working in very big facilities, different from exhibition centers. Because now, for us, this is a very recent task. We started taking into consideration in such a serious way this topic over the last decade. So we often invite, for example, managing director or people involved in the organization of airports, commercial centers, docks, in order to have suggestions on how to better handle this task. And this is strictly connected with the territory. So the key is cooperation in this case. We need to be sure that every venue is able to coordinate this stuff with the local authorities, with the organizers, with all the authorities involved in the security in this case. And I'd like also to add a few words concerning something which is already mentioned today, which is our incoming events, which is the Global Exhibition Day. Every association usually has the problem on how to be listened, how to make, for example, our authorities aware of the importance of our industry, not only for the export of our companies, but also for the importance of our territories and so on. And I think that other industry started very earlier, so they are now able to be understood as a very important sector for one country. Now we started, finally, as exhibition organizers and venue and service provider, and Sergei, when he was president of UFI a few years ago, decided to launch this Global Exhibition Day. That is really something connected to to be a community. During this day, we are able to meet, even virtually, each other, and to make our voice stronger in all the countries where we are represented. So this year will be a special edition of the Global Exhibition Day, because we'll have 41 partners association, the UFI umbrella, and 3 task force meetings have been held between September and February. We have 2 specific working groups members. So a lot of efforts this year, and we'll have new tools with a new website, globalexhibitionday.org, follow me video guide, 2-minute self-filming to show how passionate you are about your job. So we are trying to pull all the efforts that our members are doing together to share it, and to be able to also follow the best practices in this field. I hope that, as usual, the Indian Association of the Exhibition Industry will be able to give us strong support in organizing this event, because it's something that is becoming really useful. You know, people who come from other industry are often surprised about the UFI events or IEIA events, where people working the exhibition field meet. It's something different on what happened in other industry. For example, my successor in my company comes from another industry. The first time I attended the UFI meeting, was so surprised about the fact that in our industry there is a community. For us, it's quite normal. In other industry, it's not so normal, because we are naturally brought to consider that in our industry, win-win is possible. Differently from our industry, we win when we cooperate. That's why our association are so strong, and that's why I'm so glad to be invited here from your association. Thank you. It's my first time at IEIA, but I'm sure it will not be the last.
Appreciate your presence here. May I request the President, IEIA, Mr. K.V. Nagendra Prasad, to kindly come up on stage and express our gratitude, our appreciation with a memento. So, just a second. Thank you very much once again, Mr. Peraboni, for a brilliant talk and for being here.